The asteroid base shook as the first Vrathic warship opened fire. Dust and debris fell from the tunnel ceilings while emergency lights flickered in the darkness. Day One's shuttle had arrived just minutes before the enemy fleet, but minutes were not enough time to evacuate 200 people. "Get everyone to the transport ships," Taesung ordered over the communication system. "Fighting retreat. We hold them as long as we can." Day One grabbed his rifle and joined the defensive line at the main entrance. Beside him, fighters checked their weapons and prepared to face impossible odds. They all knew this might be their last stand. The Vrathic did not take prisoners anymore, not after the resistance had started fighting back. The enemy came in waves. Vrathic soldiers poured through the breached entrance, their shields glowing and weapons blazing. But this time the humans had Jinho's modified rifles. For the first time in 12 years, human bullets killed the invaders. Vrathic warriors fell, their purple blood staining the tunnel floors. "Keep firing," Day One shouted. "Make every shot count." In the deeper tunnels, young Sang-woo led a group of fighters toward the detention level. When the base was first established, they had rescued some prisoners and kept them protected in the lower chambers. Sang-woo was only 19, barely more than a boy, but he moved with purpose and determination. "We're not leaving them behind," he said when others questioned his mission. The detention level held 300 people, humans and aliens alike, all too weak or injured to fight. Sang-woo and his team began loading them onto transport vehicles, working frantically as explosions echoed from above. One of the prisoners, an old woman, grabbed Sang-woo's arm. "Why are you doing this? You could escape." "Save yourselves, because that's what the Vrathic would do," Sang-woo replied. "We're better than them." Someone in his team had a camera, a small device salvaged from before the war. They recorded Sang-woo helping the prisoners, his face dirty and determined. Later, that footage would spread through secret channels across dozens of worlds. It would become a symbol of human defiance, proof that humanity had not lost its soul even in the darkest times. Back at the main entrance, the defensive line was collapsing. Too many Vrathic, too many ships, too much firepower. Day One fell back with the remaining fighters covering the evacuation. They lost people with every step, friends and comrades cut down by enemy fire. Then something impossible happened. The Vrathic fleet suddenly broke formation. Their coordinated assault fell apart as new ships appeared on the scanners. These were human ships, 30 of them, old and battered but flying in perfect military formation. They opened fire on the Vrathic with everything they had. "Who are they?" Hana asked in disbelief. Taesung's face broke into a rare smile. "That's Admiral Yoon Seo. She's alive." Admiral Yoon Seo had been the third-ranking officer in Earth's Defense Force when the invasion began. Everyone thought she died when the Vrathic destroyed the military headquarters. But she had survived along with several thousand crew members. For 12 years she had been building a secret fleet, salvaging wrecked ships and training survivors. Now she had arrived at their darkest hour. "All resistance forces, this is Admiral Yoon Seo." Her voice came through the communication channel. "Evacuate immediately. We'll cover your retreat." The resistance fighters abandoned the base and fled to their ships. Behind them, Yoon Seo's fleet engaged the Vrathic in brutal close combat. The human ships were outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought with skill and desperation. They gave the resistance the time they needed to escape. The surviving fighters gathered at a new rendezvous point, an abandoned space station deep in neutral territory. As they counted their losses and treated their wounded, Taesung called a meeting of all cell leaders. Admiral Yoon Seo joined them via holographic projection. She was a stern woman in her 50s with gray hair and hard eyes. She looked like she had not slept in weeks. "I've been watching the resistance grow," Yoon Seo said. "I've seen your raids, your small victories. But small victories won't win this war. We need something bigger." "We damaged their command network," Hana reported. The electromagnetic pulse worked. For 6 hours, the Vrathic in that sector were completely disorganized. Yoon Seo nodded. "I know, I've been analyzing the data. If we can replicate that effect across multiple sectors simultaneously, we could create a window of opportunity. But we need allies." Taesung stepped forward. "I've made contact with the Kelthera. They're willing to join us. So are 3 other enslaved species. They've all suffered under Vrathic rule. They all want freedom." "Then we form a coalition," Yoon Seo said. "We call it the Free Coalition. Human and alien, fighting together against tyranny." Over the next weeks, the coalition took shape. The Kelthera brought their intelligence network and knowledge of Rathic infrastructure. The other species contributed their own skills and resources. Jinho worked with alien engineers to improve the weapons and technology. Hana collaborated with scientists from 4 different worlds to perfect the electromagnetic pulse weapon. But the Vrathic were not idle. Their supreme leader, High Sovereign Krelmoth, personally took command of the operation to eliminate humanity. He was ancient and cruel, having ruled the Empire for 300 years. To him, humans were not just slaves or enemies. They were dangerous vermin that needed to be exterminated completely. The humans have shown themselves to be more troublesome than anticipated, Krelmoth announced to his military commanders. They corrupt other species with their ideas of freedom and rebellion. This cannot be tolerated. I want every human world burned. Every human ship destroyed. Every human child eliminated. We will erase them from history. The Vrathic began a systematic campaign of genocide. Human colonies that had survived the initial invasion were now targeted for complete destruction. Labor camps were emptied and prisoners executed. Entire populations were wiped out in orbital bombardments. News of the massacres reached the resistance. Daiwan watched footage of burning cities and mass graves. He saw bodies of children, civilians who had done nothing wrong except be human. The rage inside him burned hotter than any sun. We end this, he said quietly. No more raids. No more small victories. We take the fight to them. We make them pay for every life they've taken. Tae-sung agreed. The Kelthera have identified 47 systems where we can strike simultaneously. If we hit them all at once during the network disruption, we can free millions of slaves and capture critical resources. It's a massive operation, Yoon Seo warned. We'll be committing everything we have. If we fail, there's no backup plan. The resistance dies with us. Then we don't fail, Sang-woo said from the back of the room. The young fighter had become something of a legend after the footage of his rescue mission spread. People looked to him as a symbol of hope. The coalition spent months preparing. They built more pulse weapons, trained more fighters, and coordinated with resistance cells across the galaxy. The Kelthera smuggled weapons and supplies through Vrathic checkpoints. Allied species provided intelligence and support. Finally, everything was ready. The coalition had one shot to strike a devastating blow against the Empire. They would hit 47 systems at once, free as many slaves as possible, and prove that tyranny could be defeated. Daewon stood in the hangar bay, watching fighters board their ships. Kyungmi was preparing her fighter squadron. Jinho was doing final checks on the weapons. Hana was reviewing the pulse weapon deployment plans. Everyone knew the stakes. Tae-sung approached Daewon and placed a hand on his shoulder. This is it. Everything we've fought for comes down to the next 6 hours. Daewon nodded. For Earth. For all the worlds they've conquered. For everyone we've lost. For freedom, Tae-sung agreed. The fleet launched into the darkness, heading toward their destiny. Behind them, Admiral Yoon Seo watched from her command ship's bridge. She had spent 12 years preparing for this moment. Now humanity would show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. The long night of slavery was ending. Dawn was coming, and it would arrive with fury. The alarm blared through the dark corridor as Daewon pressed himself against the cold metal wall. His heart pounded in his chest, but his hands remained steady on his stolen rifle. Behind him, 3 other humans crouched in the shadows, their faces covered with makeshift masks. They had 60 seconds before the guards would arrive. Move now, Daewon whispered into his communicator. The team sprinted down the hallway of the Vrathic supply depot. The aliens who ruled the galaxy had taken everything from humanity 12 years ago. They came from beyond the known stars with ships that blotted out the sun. Earth's weapons, advanced as they were, could not pierce the Vrathic shields. Within 6 months, every human world had fallen. Now billions of humans lived in chains, working in mines, factories, and laboratories across the Empire. Daewon kicked open the storage room door. Inside, rows of metal crates lined the walls. Each one contained alien technology that the Resistance desperately needed. His team moved quickly, grabbing anything they could carry. The young woman named Hana carefully scanned each crate with a handheld device. This one, she said, pointing to a large container in the corner. It has medical supplies and something else. The readings are strange. Take it, Daewon ordered. We have 30 seconds. They hauled the heavy crate toward the exit. The building shook as explosions echoed from the main entrance. That was the signal from the diversion team. Daewon allowed himself a small smile. The plan was working, but plans had a way of falling apart. The wall beside them exploded inward. 3 Vrathic soldiers emerged through the smoke, their insect-like bodies covered in black armor. They stood 7 feet tall with 4 arms and eyes that glowed red in the darkness. One of them raised a weapon that hummed with deadly energy. "Run!" Daewon shouted. He fired his rifle at the nearest Vrathic. The bullets bounced harmlessly off its personal shield. The alien did not even flinch. It fired back and the energy blast vaporized the wall where Daewon had been standing a moment before. The heat from the shot burned his face even from 10 feet away. The team scattered. Hana stumbled and Daewon grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a stack of crates. The other 2 resistance fighters laid down covering fire, their bullets useless but forcing the Vrathic to advance more carefully. "We need to go," Hana gasped. "Leave the crate." "No," Daewon said firmly. "We came for supplies. People are dying because we don't have medicine. We're not leaving empty-handed." He pulled a grenade from his belt, one of the last human-made explosives they had. It would not kill the Vrathic, but it might buy them time. He threw it at the ceiling above the aliens. The explosion brought down chunks of metal and sparked electrical fires. In the confusion, the team grabbed the crate and ran. They burst out into the night air of New Busan, the human colony world that now served as a Vrathic labor camp. The sky was dark, filled with the massive shapes of alien patrol ships. In the distance, the lights of the city flickered. Once this place had been home to 3 million humans. Now only 500,000 remained alive. The team reached their stolen transport vehicle and loaded the crate. Daewon took one last look at the burning depot behind them. Small victories, he thought. That was all they had these days. Back at the Resistance hideout, an abandoned subway tunnel beneath the ruins of the old city, Hana opened the mysterious crate. Inside, along with the medical supplies, she found a small device covered in Vrathic symbols. She studied it carefully, her scientific mind racing. "What is it?" Daewon asked. "I'm not sure yet," Hana replied, "but I think it might be part of their communication system." Over the next few days, Hana worked tirelessly on the device. She had been a xenobiologist before the invasion, studying alien life forms at the university. Now she used that knowledge to understand the enemy. She dissected Vrathic technology, studied their biology from captured specimens, and searched for any weakness. Meanwhile, Daewon received an encrypted message. It came from Commander Tae-sung, a former Earth Defense Force officer who now coordinated resistance cells across multiple systems. The message was brief but filled with hope. Meeting Point Gamma. 3 days. Bring your best people. We have a chance. Daewon had not felt hope in years. Hope was dangerous. It made you careless, made you believe in impossible things, but he could not ignore the message. Tae-sung was one of the few military leaders who survived the initial invasion. If he said they had a chance, it was worth investigating. On the 3rd day, Daewon and Hana traveled to the meeting point, a hidden base carved into an asteroid in deep space. They found dozens of other resistance fighters there, humans from different worlds who had all suffered under Vrathic rule. The meeting room was crowded and tense. Tae-sung stood at the center, his face scarred from old battles. He looked tired but determined. When he spoke, his voice carried authority. "For 12 years we have been slaves," he began. "The Vrathic crushed us because we fought them the wrong way. We used our technology against theirs and we lost. But I have discovered something. We are not the only species they enslaved. There are others, dozens of others, all suffering like us." He activated a holographic display. Images appeared showing various alien species all wearing the same chains as humanity. "If we unite," Tae-sung continued, "if we coordinate our efforts, we can hurt them. We can make them bleed." A murmur went through the crowd. Some people looked hopeful. Others looked skeptical. Daewon remained silent, listening. Then Hana stood up. She held the device they had stolen from the depot. "I've been studying this," she announced. "It's part of their command network. The Vrathic don't just communicate with technology. They use a psychic link that connects all their forces. Every soldier, every ship, every commander is part of one vast network. That's why they coordinate so perfectly. That's why they always seem to know what we're going to do." She paused, letting the information sink in. "But there's more," Hana said, her voice growing stronger. "Every network has a weakness. If we can disrupt their psychic link even for a short time, they would be vulnerable." Confused, Alone. The room erupted in conversation. Day One felt something stir in his chest, something he had not felt since Earth fell. It was hope, dangerous and powerful. Tae-sung raised his hand for silence. Then we have our mission. We find a way to break their network. We unite the enslaved species, and we show these tyrants what happens when humanity fights back. As the meeting ended and people dispersed, Daewon looked at the stars through the asteroid's observation window. Somewhere out there, the Vrathic Empire continued its reign of terror. But now in the darkness a spark had been lit. It was small, fragile, and easy to extinguish, but it was a start. The captured Vrathic shuttle drifted through space like a dead leaf on the wind. Inside, Kyung-mi sat in the pilot's seat, her hands trembling slightly as she studied the alien controls. She was 23 years old and had spent the last 2 years in a Vrathic prison transport. She knew their ships, knew their routes, and knew how they thought. Can you fly it? Daewon asked from behind her. Yes, Kyung-mi replied. But flying it is the easy part. Making them believe we're one of theirs? That's harder. The resistance had grown in the weeks since the meeting. 5 cells had come together. Nearly 200 fighters total. They now occupied a hidden base inside a massive asteroid, using old mining tunnels as their home. It was cramped, cold, and dark, but it was theirs. Jin-ho worked in what they called the engineering bay, though it was really just a large cave filled with salvaged equipment. He was a thin man with glasses that he constantly adjusted. Before the invasion, he had designed corporate spacecraft. Now he spent his days taking apart Vrathic weapons and trying to understand them. Look at this, Jin-ho said excitedly as Daewon entered the bay. He held up a modified human rifle. I've been studying their shields. They work by detecting incoming projectiles and adjusting to block them. But if we modify our weapons to emit a specific frequency, the shields read them as friendly fire and let them through. Daewon took the rifle and examined it. Does it work? In theory, Jin-ho admitted. I need to test it on actual Vrathic armor. You'll get your chance soon enough, Daewon said grimly. The Resistance was planning something big. Something that would either change everything or get them all killed. Hana had been working around the clock on her research. She had discovered that the Vrathic psychic network relied on specialized nodes, command ships that acted as relay points. If they could destroy or disable one of these nodes, every Vrathic force connected to it would be cut off from the network. The problem was getting close enough. The command ships were heavily defended, surrounded by patrol vessels and protected by the most advanced shields in the galaxy. A direct assault would be suicide. That was where Kyung-mi came in. I can get us close, she explained at the strategy meeting. I know the security codes, the patrol patterns, the communication protocols. If I fly the captured shuttle, they'll think we're one of their supply ships. We'll be inside their defensive perimeter before they realize something is wrong. And then what? Asked one of the other cell leaders, a grizzled man named Dong-hyun. We shoot our way out? Then we deliver the weapon, Hana said. She activated a holographic projection showing a small device. This is an electromagnetic pulse generator. It's based on Vrathic technology, ironically. If we can plant it on the command ship, it will create a cascading failure in their psychic network. Every Vrathic soldier within 10 light years will be disconnected. For how long? Tae-sung asked. Hana hesitated. My calculation suggests 6 hours. Maybe less. The Vrathic are adaptable. They'll find a way to compensate once they understand what's happening. 6 hours, Daewon repeated. That's not much time. It's enough, Tae-sung said firmly. If we coordinate with the other enslaved species, 6 hours is all we need to strike across multiple systems simultaneously. We'll hit them hard, fast, and everywhere at once. The plan was ambitious, perhaps insanely so, but it was also their best chance. Tae-sung had been making contact with other resistance movements. The Kelthera, an insectoid species that had been enslaved for 3 generations, had an extensive underground network. They moved supplies, information, and people across Vrathic space without detection. With their help, the Resistance could coordinate attacks across dozens of worlds. But first, they needed to prove the weapon worked. Kyung-mi volunteered to pilot the mission. She knew it was dangerous, knew she might not come back, but she also knew that someone had to do it. Daewon insisted on joining her along with Hana and 2 other fighters. The night before the mission, Daewon found Kyung-mi in the observation deck staring out at the stars. Can't sleep? He asked. She shook her head. I keep thinking about my family. They were on the transport with me when I escaped. I don't know if they're still alive. Daewon had no easy words to offer. He had lost his own family during the invasion. His wife and daughter had been in the capital when the Vrathic bombardment began. He did not know if they died quickly or suffered. He tried not to think about it. "We fight so others don't have to lose what we lost," he said finally. Kyung-mi nodded. "I know. That's why I'm doing this." The mission launched at dawn. The captured shuttle slipped away from the asteroid base, its stolen transponder broadcasting Vrathic identity codes. Kyung-mi guided the ship through the patrol routes she had memorized, her hand steady despite her fear. They approached the command ship, a massive vessel shaped like a curved blade. It was 3 miles long and bristled with weapons. Smaller ships swarmed around it like insects around a hive. Kyung-mi's communicator crackled with Vrathic language, harsh and guttural. "They're asking for our cargo manifest," she translated. "I'm sending the fake data now." The seconds stretched into minutes. Daewon gripped his rifle tightly, ready for the alarm that would mean their cover was blown. But it never came. The Vrathic accepted their credentials and directed them to a docking bay. "We're in," Kyung-mi whispered. Inside the command ship, the team moved quickly through the corridors. Hana led them toward the central node, following the schematics they had stolen. The ship's interior was strange and alien, all organic curves and pulsing lights. It felt alive, like they were walking through the guts of some massive creature. They encountered a patrol of Vrathic soldiers. Before Daewon could react, one of his fighters opened fire with Jinho's modified rifle. The bullets tore through the alien's shield and armor. The Vrathic fell, purple blood pooling on the floor. "It works," the fighter said in amazement. "Keep moving," Daewon ordered. They reached the central node chamber. It was a huge room filled with pulsing machinery and strange organic growths. At the center stood a crystalline structure that hummed with psychic energy. Hana approached it carefully, placing the electromagnetic pulse device at its base. 30 seconds until detonation, she announced. "We need to go." Alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The Vrathic had finally realized something was wrong. The team ran back toward the docking bay, fighting their way through enemy soldiers. Jinho's weapons proved their worth, dropping Vrathic warriors who had seemed invincible just weeks before. They reached the shuttle and launched just as the pulse device activated. Through the view screen, they watched the command ship's lights flicker and die. Every Vrathic vessel nearby suddenly moved erratically, their perfect coordination shattered. "It worked," Hana said breathlessly. "The network is down," but their celebration was cut short. A message came through from Taesung, his voice urgent. "We have a problem. The Vrathic found our base location. They're sending a fleet. You need to come back now." Kyung-mi pushed the shuttle's engines to their limit. But even as they raced back toward the asteroid, Daewon knew they might be too late. The resistance had struck a blow against the Empire, but the Empire was about to strike back, and when tyrants felt threatened, they showed no mercy. Kyung-mi's hands were steady on the controls as she flew toward the massive Vrathic command ship. Behind her, a squadron of 20 fighters followed in tight formation. Below them, the planet New Busan slowly rotated, its surface dotted with labor camps holding 50,000 human prisoners. "Approaching drop point," she reported. 30 seconds. In the cargo hold of her ship, Hana checked the electromagnetic pulse weapon one final time. This device was 10 times more powerful than the prototype they had used weeks ago. If it worked, every Vrathic soldier and ship in this entire sector would be cut off from their psychic network. "All coalition forces, this is Admiral Yoon Seo." The voice came through every ship's communication system. "In 30 seconds we strike. 47 systems simultaneously. This is for everyone we've lost. This is for freedom. Make them remember this day." The countdown began. Across the galaxy, thousands of fighters prepared to attack at the same moment. Human, Kelthera, and 3 other species all united against their oppressors. 10 seconds. 9. 8. Kyung-mi's ship accelerated. She dodged the defensive fire from the command ship's weapons. Her piloting skills pushed to their absolute limit. Laser blasts filled the space around her, but she flew through them like a dancer through rain. 3, 2, 1. She released the pulse weapon. It shot toward the command ship like a missile, penetrating the shields before the Vrathic could react. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire vessel went dark. The lights died. The engine stopped. Every system failed at once. Across New Busan's orbit, the same thing happened to every Vrathic ship. They drifted helplessly in space, their perfect coordination shattered. On the ground, Vrathic soldiers stumbled in confusion, their connection to the command network suddenly severed. "It's working," Hana breathed. "They're completely blind." Daewon stood on a transport ship descending toward New Busan's surface. Around him, 200 fighters checked their weapons. These were modified rifles that could pierce Vrathic shields, the fruits of Jinho's tireless work. "Remember the plan," Daewon shouted over the engines. "We hit the main camp first. Free the prisoners. Arm anyone who can fight. Then we move to the secondary camps." The transport landed hard outside the camp's perimeter. The doors burst open and the fighters poured out. The Vrathic guards were still confused, trying to understand why their network had failed. By the time they realized they were under attack, it was too late. Daewon's rifle barked in controlled bursts. Each shot dropped a Vrathic warrior. The alien shields flickered and died, unable to stop the modified bullets. Within minutes, the outer defenses fell. Inside the camp, thousands of human prisoners huddled in barracks, unsure what was happening. When Daewon's team broke open the gates, they stared in disbelief. "We're here to free you," Daewon announced. "If you can fight, take a weapon. If you can't, get to the evacuation ships. We have 6 hours before the Vrathic adapt." The response was overwhelming. Men and women who had been slaves for years grabbed rifles and joined the fight. They had rage and desperation on their side, years of suffering that finally had an outlet. Together with the resistance fighters, they swept through the camp like a storm. Similar scenes played out across 47 systems. The Free Coalition struck everywhere at once, hitting the Vrathic during their moment of maximum vulnerability. Ships were captured. Camps were liberated. Weapons depots were seized. For 4 glorious hours, the Empire bled. In space above New Busan, Admiral Yoon Seo's fleet engaged the Vrathic armada. Without their coordination, the alien ships fought individually, no longer sharing tactical information or supporting each other. Yoon Seo exploited every weakness using guerrilla tactics and hit-and-run attacks. "Target their command ships first," she ordered. "Without them, the smaller vessels are just targets." Her flagship, the rebuilt destroyer Indomitable, dove toward a Vrathic carrier 3 times its size. The human ship unleashed everything it had. Missiles, railguns, and energy weapons tore into the carrier's exposed systems. The alien vessel broke apart in a massive explosion. "One down," Yoon Seo said grimly. 37 to go. On the ground, Sang-woo led a rescue mission to one of the execution camps. The Vrathic commander there had received orders to kill all human prisoners before the network went down. When Sang-woo's team arrived, they found guards in the process of herding prisoners toward firing squads. "Stop them!" Sang-woo roared. His team opened fire, cutting down the Vrathic guards, but they were too late for some. Bodies already lay on the ground, civilians who had been murdered minutes before the rescue arrived. Sang-woo knelt beside a dead child, his hands shaking with rage and grief. "We save who we can." Tae-sung's voice came through his communicator. The commander had arrived with reinforcements. "We can't save everyone, but we make sure their deaths mean something." Sang-woo nodded and stood. There were still thousands of prisoners to rescue. He buried his grief and kept fighting. As the 4th hour passed, the coalition controlled 3 entire star systems. Millions of slaves had been freed. Dozens of Vrathic ships had been destroyed or captured. The Empire was reeling from the coordinated assault, but Hana's monitoring equipment showed worrying signs. "They're adapting," she reported to Admiral Yoon Seo. "The Vrathic are finding ways to communicate without their network. They're using old-fashioned radio and light signals. They're regrouping. How long do we have?" Yoon Seo asked. "Maybe 2 hours. Maybe less," the Admiral made a quick decision. "All coalition forces, this is Yoon Seo. We're entering the final phase. Grab everything you can and prepare to withdraw. We've hurt them badly, but we can't stay much longer." In the engineering bay of a captured Vrathic supply depot, Jinho worked frantically with a team of technicians. They were downloading data from the alien computers, stealing everything they could about Vrathic technology, military deployments, and strategic plans. "Got it," Jinho said as the download completed. "This information is worth more than 10 battles." But as the coalition prepared to withdraw, a new threat appeared. A massive fleet arrived in the New Busan system, led by a command ship larger than any they had seen before. On board was Overseer Rathvor, the brutal Vrathic commander responsible for all human territories. Rathvor had survived the network disruption through sheer willpower and rage. Now he was determined to crush the rebellion personally. "All ships, this is Rathvor." His voice boomed across all frequencies. "You pathetic creatures dare to challenge the Empire? I will show you the price of defiance. For every Vrathic you killed, I will execute 1,000 humans. Starting now." His fleet targeted the evacuation ships, the transports carrying freed prisoners away from the planet. Energy beams lanced out, destroying 2 transports before they could escape. Thousands of humans died in those explosions. People who had survived years of slavery only to be killed moments after their liberation. "No," Daewon whispered. Watching from the ground, Kyungmi's fighter squadron moved to intercept, but they were vastly outnumbered. Rathavor's ships advanced like an unstoppable tide. Then Admiral Yoon Seo made a decision that would be remembered for generations. She ordered the Indomitable to ram directly into Rathvor's command ship. Her crew protested, but she silenced them with a look. "I've lived long enough," she said quietly. "The rest of you evacuate to the escape pods. I'll handle this myself." "Admiral, no," Kyungmi pleaded over the communication channel. "That's an order, pilot," Yoon Seo replied. "You all have futures ahead of you. I've had my time, now go. Make sure this victory means something." The Indomitable accelerated to ramming speed. Rathavor's ship tried to evade, but the human destroyer was too fast. The 2 vessels collided in a catastrophic explosion that lit up the darkness like a new star. Both ships were destroyed instantly. In the silence that followed, the Vrathic fleet faltered. Their commander was dead, and without the network they had no clear chain of command. The coalition forces used that moment to complete their withdrawal. By the end of the 6 hours, the Free Coalition had captured 15 star systems, freed over 10 million slaves, and destroyed a significant portion of the Vrathic military. But they had paid a terrible price. Thousands of fighters were dead, including Admiral Yoon Seo and many other heroes. Daewon stood on the bridge of an evacuation ship, watching New Busan shrink behind them. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. High Sovereign Krelmuth still ruled the Empire, and his response to this defeat would be brutal. "What now?" Kyungmi asked, her face streaked with tears for the fallen admiral. "Now we prepare for the real fight," Daewon replied. "We showed them we can bleed them. Next we show them we can kill them." High Sovereign Krelmuth sat on his throne aboard his personal warship, watching reports of the rebellion's victories. His 4 eyes glowed with ancient fury. For 300 years he had ruled the Vrathic Empire without challenge. Now these humans dared to defy him. "Bring my full fleet," he commanded. "I will personally oversee their extermination." The Vrathic mobilized their reserves, pulling ships from across the Empire. Krelmuth's armada numbered over 3,000 vessels, the largest military force assembled in a century. They would crush the rebellion and make an example that would echo for generations. But the Free Coalition had learned something important from the battles. The Vrathic were not invincible. Their greatest strength, the psychic network that gave them perfect coordination, was also their greatest weakness. Without it, they fought as individuals, and individuals could be defeated. Hana presented her findings to the coalition leadership. They gathered in a captured Vrathic station, now serving as their temporary headquarters. The room was filled with human and alien commanders, all listening intently. "The network is more than communication," Hana explained. "It allows every Vrathic soldier to instantly share combat experience. When one learns something, they all learn it. That's why they adapt so quickly. That's why our tactics only work once." "So disrupting it temporarily isn't enough," Taesung said. "We need to destroy it permanently." "Exactly," Hana agreed. "The network has a central hub, a massive structure on the Vrathic homeworld. It's called the Central Nexus. If we destroy it, we sever their psychic link forever. They'll never be able to rebuild it." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what she was suggesting. An assault on the Vrathic homeworld would be suicide. The planet was protected by hundreds of defense stations and thousands of ships. No enemy force had ever gotten close. Daewon stood up. "Then we don't attack like an enemy. We attack like resistance fighters. Small, fast, unpredictable. We'll need a diversion," Kyungmi added. "Something big enough to draw Krelmuth's attention away from the homeworld." Taesung nodded slowly. "My fleet can provide that diversion. We'll engage his armada in the outer sectors. It won't be pretty, but we'll keep them busy." "I'll lead the strike team to the homeworld," Daewon said. "We go in quiet, hit the Nexus, and get out." "I'm coming with you," Hana insisted. You'll need someone who understands the technology. So am I, Sang-woo added. The young fighter had become one of the Resistance's best soldiers in the months since the uprising began. Kyung-mi stepped forward. Someone has to fly you through the defense grid. That's my job. The plan was insane, but it was their only chance. The coalition spent weeks preparing, gathering intelligence from Kelthera spies and studying captured Vrathic data. Jinho modified a fast stealth ship, equipping it with experimental cloaking technology reverse-engineered from alien systems. When everything was ready, Tae-sung launched the diversion attack. His fleet, now numbering 500 ships after absorbing reinforcements from freed colonies, engaged Krelmoth's armada in the Koreth sector. The battle was brutal and immediate. Tae-sung stood on his command ship's bridge watching enemy vessels fill the view screen. All ships spread out. Hit-and-run tactics. Make them chase us. The coalition ships scattered, forcing the Vrathic to divide their forces. Tae-sung's flagship drew fire from 3 enemy cruisers at once. His ship shook as weapons impacted the shields. Return fire, he ordered calmly. Target their engine sections. As the massive battle raged, Kyung-mi piloted the stealth ship toward the Vrathic homeworld. Beside her sat Daewon, Hana, Sang-woo, and 3 other fighters. The ship was cramped and packed with explosives. Entering the defense grid now, Kyung-mi announced. Everyone stay quiet. Our cloak won't hide sound. The planet below was ugly, all gray cities and industrial complexes. This was the heart of the Empire, the world from which the Vrathic had launched their conquest of the galaxy. Somewhere down there was the central nexus. They landed in a ruined district on the outskirts of the capital city. The team moved quickly through abandoned streets using stolen Vrathic armor to blend in. Hana's scanner led them toward the nexus, which pulsed like a heartbeat in the center of the city. Security is lighter than expected, Daewon observed. They never thought anyone would get this close. But as they approached the nexus compound, they encountered heavy resistance. Vrathic guards in ceremonial armor blocked their path. These were elite warriors, the personal guard of the sovereign. A firefight erupted in the streets. Sang-woo took cover behind a wall and fired in controlled bursts. His rifle dropped 3 Vrathic before they could react. But more kept coming, drawn by the sounds of battle. We need to move faster, Daewon shouted. Blow the wall. They used explosives to blast through the compound's outer defenses. Inside, they found the central nexus. It was a massive structure, part machine and part living organism, pulsing with psychic energy. Hana approached it with her scanning equipment. This is it, she said. The heart of their network. If I can overload it, the feedback will destroy every connection point in the galaxy. How long do you need? Daewon asked. 10 minutes to set up the overload sequence, maybe 5 more before it explodes. You'll have it, Daewon promised. The team formed a defensive perimeter while Hana worked. Vrathic forces poured into the chamber, but the humans fought with desperate skill. Every shot had to count. Every second mattered. Sang-woo took a blast to his shoulder but kept fighting. One of the other fighters fell, then another. Daewon emptied magazine after magazine, his rifle growing hot in his hands. Done, Hana announced. The overload is starting. We have 5 minutes to get clear. Go, Daewon ordered. Everyone back to the ship. They ran through the compound, Vrathic soldiers pursuing them. Kyung-mi had the ship ready, engines already warming up. The team piled inside, dragging their wounded with them. Lift off now, Daewon commanded. The ship shot into the sky as the central nexus began to glow with unstable energy. Behind them, the entire structure erupted in a massive explosion. The blast wave rippled outward, destroying everything within a mile radius. But more importantly, the psychic network died. Across the galaxy, every Vrathic soldier suddenly lost their connection to the collective consciousness. They were alone for the first time in their lives, cut off from the shared knowledge and coordination they had relied on for centuries. In the Koreth sector, Tae-sung immediately noticed the change. The Vrathic fleet's movements became confused and uncoordinated. Ships began firing on each other by mistake. Entire formations broke apart. All coalition forces, this is Tae-sung, he broadcast. The network is down. Press the attack. The tide of battle turned. The coalition ships, working together and coordinating their efforts, overwhelmed the confused Vrathic fleet. Ship after ship fell to human weapons. On Krelmoth's flagship, panic spread through the command deck. The High Sovereign himself felt the network die, felt the sudden isolation after 300 years of connection. For the first time in his long life, he experienced true fear. Retreat, he ordered. All ships withdraw to the homeworld. But retreat was impossible. Taesung's fleet had them surrounded. The battle continued for 3 more hours, until only a handful of Vrathic ships remained. Among them was Krelmoth's flagship. Taesung boarded the enemy vessel personally, leading a strike team through its corridors. They found Krelmoth on his bridge, surrounded by dead guards. The ancient alien looked old and tired without his network. "You cannot win," Krelmoth said weakly. "Even without the network, the Empire has billions of soldiers." "But they're not connected anymore," Taesung replied. "They're individuals capable of choice. And individuals can choose to stop fighting, can choose peace." He raised his rifle and fired once. Krelmoth fell, and the Vrathic Empire fell with him. The stealth ship made it back to Coalition space with the strike team. They had all survived, though Sang-woo would carry scars from his shoulder wound for the rest of his life. Hana was quiet, thinking about the billions of Vrathic who were now cut off from the only life they had ever known. "Did we do the right thing?" she asked Daewon. He thought about his wife and daughter, about the millions of humans who had died in slavery, about the children executed in camps. "We gave them what they tried to take from us: choice, freedom, the ability to be individuals instead of parts of a machine." Over the next months, the Vrathic Empire collapsed. Without their network and with their leader dead, the various Vrathic factions turned on each other. Some sued for peace with the Coalition, others retreated to isolated systems. A few tried to continue the war, but they were defeated by combined human and alien forces. The galaxy began to heal. Former slaves rebuilt their worlds. The Free Coalition became a permanent alliance, dedicated to ensuring tyranny never rose again. New governments formed based on cooperation rather than conquest. 5 years after the final battle, a ceremony was held on Earth. The planet had been reclaimed and rebuilt, its scars slowly fading. A massive monument was unveiled, bearing the names of everyone who had died fighting for freedom. Hana's name was there. She had died 3 years earlier, her body finally giving out from the radiation exposure she had suffered at the Nexus. Daewon stood before the monument in his general's uniform, older and grayer but still strong,